bookworms, and welcome back to my channel. I don't know if you can tell, but I am slightly different today. My books are gone. They are all beside me, and I'm not going to do every book that I own type of video, but it's given me a chance to create some more content and figure out which books I actually own, because I don't have a designated bookshelf. We currently don't have the space for it. I had books, 2 stacks of books behind me. I had my book bag on the window, which was all the books that I need to read. I have storage down below, which was full of books that I've already read, and same in the cupboard beneath my desk. So my books have been scattered all over the place, and I haven't had a chance to get them all out and look at them and remember books that I have and books that I've loved. Yeah, I am filming a lot of different videos and short clips with the books as I've got all of them out. I do own 130 books, which is quite shocking for me, as I don't have a bookshelf to put them all in. I didn't think it was possible for me to hoard that many books. So basically I found a stack of books that I have loved and I don't see enough people talking about it. So I'm going to tell you all about the books that I have loved and I think need some more appreciation on BookTube, Bookstagram, Book Talk. People need to know about these books. So I am going to share them with you. So I have 13 books here that I feel that people need to know about. I'm going to start with a polar based book, and that is Dark Matter by Michelle Paver. Dark Matter is one that I discovered last year, and I loved this. This was a beautiful ghost story set in the Arctic Circle, and it followed somebody through their journey on this expedition, but also a main focus was on isolation and dealing with an unseen terror. So I really loved this. This was beautifully written. It was very atmospheric and kind of gothic in style. This one was a beautiful story and one of my favorite polar based horror books. So I definitely recommend checking this one out. The overall premise of Dark Matter, like I did mention, follows themes of isolation, unknown terror, but it also is a beautiful story about somebody's growth and experience in this very isolated setting. So I love this, and it is definitely a book that I feel like I will pick up again at some point. Next up is something quite different, and that is The Haunting of Hackett House by Astrid Addams. So this one for me obviously doesn't get a lot of attention. I've never seen anybody talk about this book, recommend it or anything, but it's a nice short novella that is very odd. So this story follows a girl who takes up a job in this remote home, and everything is made out of this red wood, and so it's quite ominous to her when she's stepping into the house. The people in the house just don't seem normal to her, and everything goes crazy after she starts to live here for a longer period of time. You go in thinking one thing and there's a twist, and it makes this a really interesting story to read. It's such a fast short book that you could probably read this in like a weekend. So it's a beautiful story. I really love the characters in this. You really feel connected to our main character. I think this is a really, really good read to pick up if you're looking for something a little bit weird or wacky, and you also enjoy occultist stories. So yeah, check this out. So next up, I have to talk about this author. He's in here twice actually, and that is Christopher Robertson. So I started with a different book that I will mention soon, but The October Society for me is such an incredible masterpiece. I feel like not a lot of people know or talk about these stories. This is the first book in the trilogy, and I've been ranting and raving about it for the last year. This is a collection of short stories, and it's set around our main 6 characters, and they each tell their stories around a campfire in the lead up to Halloween night. And we get each of these short stories in each episode, which is each chapter. And then we also like have these really interesting cut to scenes, jumps to ads, and then we go back into like our main characters, so outside of the short stories. So everything gets tied together into this like neat little bow. So this one is a perfect spooky read. It's not too graphic. The short stories in here do get graphic, but I feel like there's something for everybody to love, and I absolutely adore the October Society. And I think I really love Christopher Robinson's writing. It's so different and unique. It's written like a cinematic way. So the October Society is set up like a TV show, and it's supposed to be set between the static on TVs. I thoroughly enjoyed this book so much. Everybody needs to read this at least once in their life to experience what this is like. Next up, this is a slightly odd pick for me, and that is The Hunting of Brynn Wilder by Wendy Webb. This one is such a mind-bending story, which is probably why I've put it on this list. For me, what really pulls me into horror is the unknown horrors and the twisty elements of stories and pulling it into real life human experiences. So Brynn obviously goes through very hard times. She loses somebody, so is dealing with a lot of grief, and goes to this small town by the lake, and her life kind of just changes. I was expecting just a typical hunting story, but it really messed with my head and is one of the reasons why it sticks with me. And that's why I want people to also experience it, because not a lot of people actually talk about this story. If you enjoy the gothic style of writing, very atmospheric settings, and a mind-bending horror, then do check out The Hunting of Brynn Wilder. Next up is a book that I've seen people in America talk about, but not a lot of people here in the UK actually know about. And that is The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. This story, again, is another polar-based horror story, a dual timeline-based story. And we jump between the disappearance of a young woman back in 1908, I believe, and then also back into present day when Ruthie's mum disappears, and the sister duo have to figure out what exactly happened and uncover a lot of secrets within their home and family. So this one is really interesting. It's very atmospheric again. I have a theme with books that I enjoy. They are things that are atmospheric in nature, very character driven stories, and something that pulls me in. And I feel like this one deals with like disappearance and family dramas, which are all things that we as humans go through. And I feel like that's where horror really is horrific for me, and I enjoy reading that. So yeah, this story has a lot of secrets, and you learn throughout this book. It's a really interesting read. I loved it. I read this during the winter season last year, so yeah, this might be the perfect read for this winter for somebody. Moving away from winter and back into summer, another book that I don't see anybody talk about is The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniel. So this story is a supernatural, like devil-based story, and it's incredible. It is set in like the 80s during like a heat wave in this small town, and it's about possession and temptation throughout somebody's life and dealing with the fact that Satan has come to town. So this one is a really fun read. It's spooky, it's also very occultist based, and it really delves into the evil side of people and the human psyche. So I really love this book. I feel like I'm due a reread of this at some point. Next up, we have the Cotton Candy Massacre. This one I didn't see a lot of people talk about until recently. I think that this one kind of took off, and I can see why. This one is such an incredible read. Like I said, Christopher Robinson does cinematic writing so well. This story is all about killer clowns and graphic nature, I guess. It's about a cotton candy machine that turns people into were-clowns, essentially. So this one is incredible. We actually have a second part to this, which I've also read. So this story was incredible. It is so cinematic. If you enjoy clowns, definitely pick this one up. Another book that I want to tell you about, this is where we talk things out. Essentially, this story I don't really see people talk about. It's a short indie published story that is centered around family dynamics and estranged mother-daughter relationships. This one was incredible to read. It is so short. I read it in a day, but it is full of atmospheric nature, and I really loved this. This story kind of cemented that I enjoy like difficult family relationships in stories. So yeah, thanks to this book, I kind of know another subgenre that I enjoy. So check this out if you like very weird short horror that is centered around family dynamics and trying to rebuild relationships with family members. Next up is The Bird Eater by Ania Ahlborn. This story I don't really see get talked about in this genre, but essentially The Bird Eater for me was incredible. It had a lot of everything in this. We had the creepy horror that I really enjoy, as well as like dealing with human nature and feelings of grief and dealing with small town dramas, I guess. So this one was really good. I think I read this on like one of my train journeys, and I just couldn't put it down. It was so intriguing, and it's really difficult for a book to make me kind of feel emotions with the characters and what they're dealing with, and this book did that. Definitely really loved this, and I think it deserves more people to read it. Next up is Cirque Berserk by Jessica Guess. So this one is another carnival-based story. It's one that I read for my clown vlog, which I will leave linked up above and down below. This one is a fun horror slasher-based story. So this is quite different from the other books that I've mentioned already. This one, for me, is very much like a roller disco, but add in killers and lots of blood. It's such an incredible short read. I wish the character development in this was kind of more drawn out, but of course it is a short book, so that is kind of difficult to do. But overall, I really love the 90s feel to this story and the overall outcome and dynamics in this book. It was a fun, fast-paced slasher, and definitely one that people need to check out if you enjoy the slasher elements in stories. Next up is All the White Spaces. So All the White Spaces is a story that is really long. It's another polar horror book. This story reminded me a lot of Dark Matter, the one that I mentioned before, where it's set in an isolated area. Instead of the Arctic though, this one is Antarctica, and it's still an expedition. It's a group of people on a ship exploring Antarctica, and they have to deal with a lot of hardships whilst living in such a harsh and remote area. This one has more people in it. They all have to bung together to try to survive the harsh winter, I guess, in Antarctica. So this one was incredible. I loved reading this. It did take me a longer time to get through this because it is a chunkier book, but it is so worth your time. If you love isolation and doing things for survival, then this one is really good. And especially with like unknown terror, this one has a lot of that in there too. Next up we have Anybody Home. But this one I don't see anybody talk about. This is like an extreme horror, and it is a book that made me test my limits with certain triggers that trigger me. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This is a story about home invasion, but not in the sense of from the victim's point of view. This is from the perpetrator's point of view, and that is where the scary element comes in. This story delves into the details and tells the reader how to invade someone's privacy and private spaces and stay hidden. So this one made me think a lot about like how we keep ourselves safe, and whilst we think everything we're doing is right, criminals, people who like to invoke fear onto others by invading their homes, can manipulate certain things that you do to keep yourself safe to get inside the house. And that was terrifying. I was so scared reading this that it made me consider everything that I do myself. So this was such an eye-opener. It tested my limits on horror that I can handle, and I actually loved this. That feeling you get when you read a book that makes you so scared, it just can't be topped. So this story definitely did that for me. I loved this. I know a lot of people will struggle with how slow this is. This is not a fast book. Even though it's really short, it's not fast. There is so many details that you need to read to really experience this whole thing. So yeah, just bear that in mind if you do pick this up. This one is a very slow read, but it's intense and terrifying if you're terrified of that trigger. So yeah, this is another one I think more people need to talk about. And the last book that I want to mention is Moon of the Crusted Snow. This is an apocalyptic story that centers around a First Nations town, and they get cut off. They are remote already, but they get further cut off during a storm, and it's really about how they're trying to survive in this new isolation. This one was such a good read. It again is a really short book, so you might get through this really quickly. This one was full of twists and turns and a really, really good read. So do check this out. And there you have it. Those were the 13 books that I think people need to read and talk about more. So let me know in the comments which one you're interested in, or let me know which ones you have read. So until next time, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!